This is the John Brown Alliance, where we don't fear, we fight. I am sitting in a very nice place right now, in my mind and my spirit, because I feel peace. The reason is because right now, as we speak, white Nazis are planning to turn the capital of this nation into basically the stronghold, as we call it in Native American language. This is where if you defeat and put down Washington, D.C., you have defeated the nation. So if this comes to pass, and Donald Trump is able to make everyone be afraid, if you're a person of color, to leave your house, the next step is he's going to pull you out of your house. But we're not there yet. Not by a long shot. My peace comes from the fact that there is a spirit in everything. And the city of Washington, D.C., as a whole, was built by slaves. It was built by slaves. By the same people whose descendants are now trying to take away black people's right to walk the streets of Washington, D.C. without being harassed. But their blood, sweat, and tears went into the construction of that nation. Of this nation, I'm sorry. And the nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Under the whip of a slave master. This city, Washington, D.C., that was built on the backs of people of color by white people, is slated to be taken over by white people whose immigrants weren't even here when there was slavery. So what do you fear exactly? That same blood runs through my veins and some of yours. And in all honesty, that has been the fear of the white man since the inception of this country. That the original sin they committed was going to come back to haunt him. And I'm going to tell you how we can make that a reality right now. It all depends on how much you're willing to risk and give. Please like and subscribe to this video right now if you want to continue to hear about what's going on with the occupation of Washington, D.C. We also support the general strike headed up by Mr. Paul Lance. However, we do think there should be boycotts on certain businesses. But since he's getting a little bit of, well, I won't say a little bit, a lot of notoriety on YouTube, follow him when it goes to the, as it applies to the general strike. Because that needs to happen right now. And what we advocate right here in Washington, D.C., there are 26 employed air traffic controllers at Reagan National Airport right now. We need at least half of you to start a sick out right now. Now, this has to be a rolling sick out. It does, Mr. Paul Lance, because of the simple fact that everybody is not going to jump on board. Even though we need to do everything together, if you give people a day or two, they'll come to their senses. When Washington National Airport, I'm sorry, Reagan National is not operating, then Dulles is going to sick out. And then Thurgood Marshall. Because there's no use going to work when the planes aren't flying. So the first thing we need to do is ground every plane in the United States of America possible, starting today, tomorrow, and Friday. with the most crucial hubs: Reagan National, Dulles Airport, Thurgood Marshall, BWI. Truck drivers are also going to take part in this. Now, this whole thing was supposed to start on September 1st. Well, we need you now. Simply because we all, no matter what group we belong to, what race we belong to, what organization we belong to, there's strength in numbers. And instead of worrying about clickbait and who agrees with you on this or that, we need to act now. Because this is when we have the numbers. Washington, D.C., I have been predicting since 2016, is going to be the catalyst for absolute change and a reformation. Or maybe a civil war. Hopefully, a civil war. So with that being said, I would like to let you know how this can turn out if you fail. And America has failed Black America time and time again. Black citizens of the United States, according to amendments to the United States Constitution, have never achieved true citizenship, nor has the Native Americans. So I'm going to read you something, because I always get accosted on the street and people ask me, which should I read, or, and they never read it. So I'm going to read it to you. I'm going to take the time to educate you about how this can go if you fuck it up. Before I do this, let me let you know that as it stands right now, what Donald Trump is doing in Washington, D.C. is going to be a master class in find the fuck out. The reason I say this is because restaurants will be closed if they have to protect Latino Americans. Black neighborhoods are not going to be infiltrated without a fight. And I know where those quadrants are. I know where the people are. But I'm not going to say it here on YouTube. But they're going to get their sea legs going over there at the Capitol, the usual places where only white people hang out. And they're going to discuss white people by dragging immigrants out of restaurants. But you know what they're not going to do? Is go into black neighborhoods. Now, I've already seen one clip of a black guy sitting on his porch, smoking a cigarette, and 5 officers came up and decided they were going to question him. He answered the questions. I wouldn't have done that. That's, my prerogative. However, it's done on an isolated incident so that they intimidate you. But they're not going to go in there, like he said, with stormtroopers and all of that shit. Because let me tell you something about Washington, D.C. residents. They got more guns and more people trained to use guns than the 800 people or 1,000 people that Donald Trump sent to Washington, D.C. But we'll see if I'm right. So at any rate, I want to read this to you in case this all goes sideways. Most of all, I want you to listen. And listen good. Because too many black and Latino people are not listening. Too many of our elected officials don't remember their father's struggles. Now, I'm going to warn you right now that this has racial epithets in it. But it was written by James Baldwin. And I want you to hear me read this because none of you are ever going to read it and probably can't find it. So I'm going to proceed. Like I said, in case you haven't before, please like and subscribe to John Brown Alliance so that you can get this information on time in real time. If you want to contact us personally, you can do that also at johnbrownalliance2025@gmail.com. On April 17th, 1964 in Harlem, New York City, a young salesman, father of two, left a customer's apartment and went into the streets. There was a great commotion in the streets, which especially since it was a spring day, involved many black people, including running, frightened little boys. They were running from the police, other people in windows. In terror of the police because the police had their guns out and were aiming the guns at roofs. The salesman noticed policemen were beating up a kid. So I spoke up and asked them, "Why are you beating him like that?" Police jump up and start swinging on me. He put the gun on me and said, "Get over here." I said, "What for?" An unwise question. 3 of the policemen beat up the salesman in the streets. Then they took the young salesman, whose hands had been handcuffed behind his back, along with 4 others much younger than the salesman, who were handcuffed in the same way, to the police station. There, about 35, I'd say, came into the room and started beating, punching us in the jaw, in the stomach, in the chest, beating us with a paddle club, spit on us, called us niggers, dogs, animals. They call us dogs and animals, when I don't see why we are dogs and animals, the way they are beating us. Like they beat me, they beat the other kids, an elderly fellow. They throw him almost through one of the radiators. I thought he was dead over there. The elderly fellow was Facundo Acion, a 47-year-old Puerto Rican seaman, who had also made the mistake of wanting to know why the police were beating up children. An adult eyewitness reports, "Now here come an old man, walking out of a stoop and asked the cop, say, 'Listen, sir, what's going on out here?' The cop turned around and smashed him a couple of times in the head. And one of the youngest said, 'He get that just for a question? No reason at all, just for a question?' No one had as yet been charged with any crime. Remind you of something? But the nightmare had not yet really begun. The salesman had been so badly beaten around the eye that it was found necessary to hospitalize him. Perhaps some sense of what it means to live in occupied territory can be suggested by the fact that the police took him to Harlem Hospital themselves nearly 9 hours after the beating. For 14 days, the doctors at Harlem Hospital told him that they could do nothing for his eye, and he was removed to Belleville Hospital, where for 14 days the doctors tried to save the eye. At the end of 14 days, it was clear that the bad eye could not be saved and was endangering the good eye. All that could be done then was to take the bad eye out. As of my information, the salesman is on the street again. with this attaché case, trying to feed his family. He is no more visible now because he appears an eye patch, and because he questioned the right of 2 policemen to beat up 1 child. He is known as a cop hater. Therefore, I have quite a few police look at me now pretty hard. My lawyer, he asked me to keep somebody with me at all times because the police may try to mess with me again. You will note that there is not any suggestion of any appeal to justice, and no suggestion of any recompense for the grave and gratuitous damage which this man has endured. His tone is simply the tone of one who has miraculously survived. He might have died. As it is, he is merely half blind. You will also note that the patch over his eye had been the effect of making him, more than ever, the target of the police. It is a dishonorable wound, not earned in a foreign jungle, but in the domestic one. Not that this would make any difference at all. The nevertheless, in superbity, patriotic policeman, and it proves that he is a bad nigger. I'm going to leave it at that because that account does not give me fear. It gives me joy. This is what is going to happen in Washington, D.C. If lawmakers, judges, the Supreme Court, and everyone else stays silent. This isn't the time where you can just call up Thurgood Marshall and say, hey, look, you know, I got this NAACP case where this guy was beaten to death. There is nothing there to protect us, and that's the difference that you need to recognize. That's what you need to understand. You need to stop relying on false narratives about how there's still a judicial system and how after Doge, your court case is going to afford you due process, and it's going to get there within 30 days or 60 days. That's not going to happen. So if you come to protest in Washington, D.C., do not get arrested on a Friday, because you won't be out till Monday. But if you do, understand another thing, that the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area does not have the capacity to imprison millions of people. This is why in 2016 we asked you to come here to protest against Donald Trump, but you didn't. There is no place in Washington, D.C. to house 1 million marchers. A few are going to go down to lock up at headquarters. A few are going to go to some other places. But if you do this right now, all at the same time, flood the jails and refuse to be released so that they can put a Latino or a black person in there, this is the time to do that. This is the time to stand up. This is August 2025. So I'm going to put the ask out there. If you are supported by a well-funded organization, or you're retired and you don't have to worry about going to work, and you really truly believe in standing up for this country, we ask you to be the first. We'll follow suit. Absolutely. But those of us who are going to spend 30 days in jail, people who look like me, are not going to get out. Today, tomorrow, the next day, and until this is over, you need to absolutely, positively support the general strike. And the general strike starts right now. If you provide transportation for anyone flying in and out of the United States, you need to call out sick. I'm talking metro, flights, airports, TSA, and the like. Now, to exist in America the way it's going to go forward after this whole thing is over with, if you're MAGA, if you're a white supremacist, you need to understand something. I didn't choose this skin, and my skin color is not a crime. However, I wouldn't trade looking like you for a fucking $1 million and acting the way you do. You're a disgrace to humanity. And I wear my skin proud. You wear your skin trying to intimidate other people. Slavery days are over. And you motherfuckers better bring your lunch. Because now that you have placed yourselves in Washington, D.C. under the auspices of keeping the nigger in check, I'm going to say it, keeping black people in check, this is going to be a masterclass, and find the fuck out. Because I know where you're going to fail, but you don't. Bring it, motherfuckers. Because we've been preparing for this for a long time. This is the John Brown Alliance. Hope to see you soon.